Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Kelly Byrnes here with Joe Runyan. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Great to be here.
This is an extra special Navigate Leadership conversation. Joe and I go back to the earliest days of our career. So it's really exciting to have you join me for this LinkedIn and YouTube Live conversation. And before we go into it, will you introduce your special guest that's over your shoulder for everyone?
Yeah, yeah. This is Floppy, and he is a obviously he's dead now, but he was a family pet. Really, my dad is in cattle business, and I am now too. But he was sent as a gift from some ranchers in Mexico, and Floppy lived with us for about 22 years. Was about 2,000 pounds as a mature animal, and he was the friendliest cow on the face of the earth, and everybody loved him, took pictures with him. There's articles in newspapers about him, and kids would come up and ride Floppy, and he just loved people to come up and rub his ears and pet his head and just rub on him. So he was a family pet. So when he passed, we decided to get him mounted like a deer head, and that way he could be with us forever, and people could ask questions about him, and he'd always be on our minds.
Nice. And thank you for sharing him with us. That's the first I've had in one of my interviews and conversations.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
I appreciated the story and the remembrance. And so a little bit about Joe. We're both from Kansas City, and Joe went to Rockhurst High School. If you're from Kansas City, you know it. But you went to Texas for Trinity University for your undergrad, and then KU for grad school for your MBA. How did you end up in Texas for undergrad?
Well, my dad did a lot of business in Texas, and my sister was living in San Antonio at the time, and was going to St. Mary's University. And so I went to visit her, and I thought while I was there, I'd go visit Trinity and just check it out and see what I liked about it, if I liked it at all. And honestly, it was a very difficult school to get into. I was surprised that I was accepted, and my parents were fired up that I got accepted. So I went there not knowing a whole lot about it, and ended up loving it. Spent 4 years there, still very close with a lot of friends from Trinity. So San Antonio has a soft spot in my heart, and that's how I ended up there. But I always wanted to come back home. So
nice. Well, shout out to your friends from Trinity and San Antonio, and then you came home and you joined the Sprint Publishing and Advertising. We're stacking up to be the fastest growing directory publisher in America.
Oh,
that's where Joe and I met in the early days. The reason I have this brochure is I cleared out a bunch of stuff from the garage not too long ago, and I found a bunch of our old files. And but I loved those days, and you and I've reminisced over the years once in a while when we run into each other. And first, I want to ask you, who was your favorite employee back then? Who was your favorite Sprint Publishing employee?
Well, other than you, let's see. So my second favorite, oh my gosh, there's so many.
This is a test.
I can't. Huh? Is this a test?
Because you married somebody.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, Lena, my wife, she worked there. And our secret relationship we had that everybody knew about.
But you didn't work together exactly on the same stuff.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
So, yes.
So secret romance.
Yes. And shout out to our other friends, Brian and Gail, Secret Romance, and they got married from their introduction from there too.
Yeah. And fast forward, Brian and I are still very good friends and are business partners, and have been for a long, long time. So, yeah, really, really cool relationship there.
Yeah, and I'm still good friends with a lot of friends from those days as well. And I remember when I moved from the publishing group where we worked up to marketing, which was just one floor above, and Carol was crying. And Carol, I'm sure will watch this and see that. And people were saying, well, where's Kelly going? And she goes, upstairs. Like I wasn't even going far, but just changing jobs. So it was a pretty tight knit group, and it was really tight knit because we were setting up that whole company, setting up the operations there. And so we got to bond over all these new experiences, and several of us in our first big roles out of undergrad and growing our careers there. there and got to do a lot of cool things because we were a cash cow. So we had a lot of great experiences. And then you went on to do more things in the Sprint, then T-Mobile organization. Were you still there when you weren't there when it was T-Mobile, were you? Or
No.
no. And you were there for about 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
But to supervisor management roles. And any favorite memories from back in the early days?
Oh gosh,
Lessons
you're
learned?
right. I mean, we were so young. It was my first real job out of college. I worked for my dad for a little while, and then I took this role as working for Jeff O'Brien. And
Yes,
and
I
I
remember.
was thinking this morning, I don't remember why Jeff left or when he left, but it was shortly after I started. And I remember
Oh,
I was really young and got bumped up into that supervisor role, and I had no business doing that. But it was a great, great experience and a lot of learning about managing other people. And I wasn't very good at it, but I learned a lot along the way. And that was such a fun company. There's probably people watching this that don't even know what a telephone directory is,
right.
but it was a cash cow, very, very profitable
Mhm.
part of Sprint or the United Telecom industry back then.
Yeah.
So it was just a great experience kind of growing up. I mean, that's kind of where you kind of, figured out what life was all about and working for a big company was all about and what you loved and what you didn't like and all that kind of stuff, kind of the formative years, as they say. So I love it. I
Mhm.
look back longingly on it and still have a lot of friends from that time period in my life.
Yeah. And I felt like we were so open and receptive. I felt like people gave me advice all the time. And
Hmm.
so I was like a sponge soaking it all in. And I think you were kind of like
Hmm.
that too. And
Yep.
so then the more of a sponge you are, the more people feel like they can tell you. So I was listing some of my mentors, and I got to about 12 people that
Hmm.
were giving me lots of advice, and I still appreciated all of that. And then some were on my end were from R.R. Donnelley on the printing side, but you worked with them because once the books were printed, then you had to figure out the distribution side
Yes.
those early days. So I know we worked with some of the same people, and I'm still good friends with Mary Ann Hughes from the
Oh
Dwight
my
plant.
gosh.
Yep, still talk to her once in a while and
Oh
see
my
her
God.
around.
She was
Yeah,
missing part of a finger that got caught in the printing press.
gosh,
I love Marianne.
yep,
She was a pistol. I mean, she was
she
fun. And
was.
she honestly she's responsible for my first big promotion, because she's the one
Ah,
who talked me into talking our management into shipping phone books via rail car instead of on trucks and going
oh,
to Southwest Florida. We had big directories going down there to Fort Myers, Naples, all that.
huge,
And she's
huge.
like, you could save so much money, Joan. So we kind of put a proposal together, Marianne and I, and
Ah,
then it went so well. We saved a ton of money, and I
oh,
think it looked. I kind of had a little shine on me at that point. So when Jeff left,
awesome.
yeah, I got bumped into that role. So I was very, very happy and very thankful to Marianne. And she always set me up at the hotel in Dwight to where I faced the cornfield instead of the highway. And it
Oh,
was just like,
nice.
yeah. So she's got to tell her I
Nice.
said hello. I haven't talked to her in
I will.
so,
Oh, I'm sure she'll watch this when she sees it's us.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. 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 So many great people back
Hmm.
in the day, back then. Yeah, that's fun. And then as you moved from being the sole contributor, and it really wasn't for too long before you became a
Hmm.
supervisor and then manager, what were some differences in those roles to you as far as managing people and manager versus leader and all of that?
Yeah.
Lessons learned
You
or things like that?
Yeah, it was hard for me because I was so young and I really wasn't ready for it. In college, I worked in the intramural department, had people that worked for me there, which was probably a little bit of practice because there's such different personalities you have to deal with, and it was always one of those things where you don't treat everyone the same, but you treat everybody fairly, I think, and that's difficult sometimes to kind of
Mhm.
walk that fine line where people don't feel like they're being favored or you have a teacher's pet or someone that you always pick on. But learning those situations and just kind of figuring out at a very young age how to how to treat people fairly. The golden rule is always one thing. I think I learned early on that communicating is critical, and no matter what you're doing in life, if you're communicating and getting buy-in from people, then the whole, everybody's rowing in the same direction and in a coordinated fashion. And so if they know what they're going for and everyone feels valued, then you can accomplish a lot of things. And no matter what the work environment is or who your supervisor is, as long as everybody's going the same direction, you can kind of do good things. And hopefully you're leading them in the right direction. But as long as everybody's going in the same direction, it is usually a positive thing.
Well, and there's lots of different directions you can go and different ways to go about it. So the communication is key. I saw a post recently, and we'll talk in a little bit about what you're doing now, but it reminded me of your style of just being so open and genuine. You're just the same now as you were back a long time ago when we met. not to name years, but you posted recently about you dumped something, you made a big mistake, it sounded like. And so I thought, well, there you go, just to be open with a mistake and not try to cover it up, or which sometimes management feels like they have to not show that they make a mistake, or they have to be perfect all the time.
And I think as a manager, if you are open like that, because everybody makes mistakes, and as long as people who maybe are on your team, if they're trying and have good reasons for making a decision that doesn't turn out right, if you don't, I can't, you can fault them. I mean, if they do something that's not, so smart, but if you can be supportive of why they made the decision and not get on them about the result, then I think, and just make sure they know that you're vulnerable too. I mean, you do dumb stuff, and you can dump a whole hopper of feed on the ground because you weren't paying attention and drove away. That's fine. People like that. And I think it makes you approachable, and they're more willing to take a risk because they know that, you've done dumb stuff as well. So I think it creates an environment where people are willing to take a chance and do the right thing.
And maybe don't do that 10 times before you learn the lesson.
Yes.
The right way to do that.
Yeah. And my brother, who's my boss, back in the day, I would have been terrified to let him know what happened. Of course, he's the one that found out about it before I did, because I just drove away. But he's like, look, I've done that a few times. You get a phone call or you get distracted. And for me, the wind was blowing really hard. It was blowing in my eyes. So I was kind of ducking down, wasn't paying attention, drove away, and didn't look. Anyway.
And that's what happened. Yeah. So learn from the mistakes and move forward. Okay. So then when you left Sprint, and how did you decide you're going to start the dry cleaning company? So I hadn't even mentioned that yet. Then Joe left Sprint and started Kansas City's favorite dry cleaner and laundry, Hangers Cleaners, that you ran for 20 something. You all right? Oh, there it is. Hangers Cleaners. Yes, there you go. Hangers Cleaners. Yes. For 20 something years. 21
years.
Yeah. So how did you decide to start that?
It's one of those things where I kept going the same cleaner. I was Pavlov's dogs. I was going to the same cleaner. I'd wait for my coupon. I'd bring all my stuff in, and I didn't like them. I remember the girl behind the counter. She was mean and rude, and it smelled bad. It was dirty. Didn't give it two thoughts. And I'm not a spiffy dresser. I never have been. I'm not that concerned about it. But I had a dark green shirt, and I took all my stuff in, and I picked them up, and sure enough, one of the buttons had been replaced. There were dark buttons on the shirt. One button had been replaced, and it was with a white button. So I've got all these dark buttons down the front of my button-up shirt with one white button right at my chest. I'm like,
my God.
Laughing. I'm like, I'm not that picky, but even I wouldn't wear that. And she's like, we'll fix it, with attitude, So I go back a few days later, and of course they'd replaced all the buttons with white buttons. So I got this dark shirt with these white buttons on it.
No.
Unbelievable. So that's when the seed was planted. I started looking at other dry cleaners. I thought, you know what? They're all dirty. They're all, at least the ones I went to, were just kind of, the employees were not good. They weren't friendly. Quality wasn't great. I mean, it was good enough for me, but it wasn't great. So I started looking into it. It always seems like it's easier when you're on the other side of the counter, as they say.
Yeah.
And,
how hard could it be?
Yeah, exactly. You wash clothes, you iron them, you give them back to me. So then started looking into it, and cleaners at that time, probably 90+% were using perchloroethylene, which is heavily regulated, and it's nasty stuff, very aggressive cleaning solvent. And it just it scared me a little bit. I learned that landlords would not allow you to place a perchloroethylene machine most of them in their strip malls or wherever you're going to have your cleaner. So it kind of just went on the back burner at that point. Fast forward to, I was working at Sprint PCS, and I was doing affinity marketing, and one of my biggest partners was Northwest Airlines. So I was going up to Minneapolis all the time, and worked with a girl up there who I'm still very good friends with. It's funny. And we were working on Northwest Airlines account, and her husband is an engineer, and he's a great guy. I still love him too. And we go to Britt's Pub, and we're sitting down. And it was a beautiful day in Minneapolis in spring, and so everyone's outside, and we're drinking a Black and Tan, which is Guinness beer. And I sit down with her husband. He doesn't speak very much, and I like to talk, and I get animated, especially if I've got beer in me. And finally, I asked him what the little ball in the can of Guinness, what if he knew what that does, why they put that in there. And the guy lights up like a Christmas tree, and he starts going on about how it helps with the CO2 bubbles and releasing it or something like that. And I'm really interested. And he goes on and on and on about how his company has this patent on dry cleaning and liquid CO2, and how they are going to revolutionize the dry cleaning industry. And so I'm sitting there at Britt's Pub talking to this guy, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so interested. Please tell me more. And he's sent me a package with a bunch of information, and one thing led to another. And I was hooked. I mean, I thought, this is a business plan that's going to work for me. I wanted to leave Sprint, not because I didn't like it, but because I just wanted to figure out if I could do this. I mean, I think it was more of a curiosity thing than anything. So I remember Sprint was going through some layoffs at the time, and I suggested to my boss that, hey, I will volunteer. I figured it'd be 6 months or a year later, and I'd get a package at least, and someone who didn't want to be leaving wouldn't be leaving. It's like, okay, this is a perfect scenario. Well, it couldn't have been 2 or 3 weeks later. We were in Dallas making a pitch to American Airlines, and I got a phone call saying, you need to come home right now and pack up your stuff, and you're gone. And so it's like, geez, my wife, who I met at Sprint, had quit her job because we just had our second kid. So we had 2 kids under the age of 3, and she had quit to stay home with them. So we went from, dual income, no kids, to no income, 2 kids. Anyway, it was a pretty stressful time in life. But anyway, so I decided to leave. Sprint paid for me to go to the Kauffman Foundation's fast track course. And that was very, very helpful. Put the business plan together, and things started rolling from that point. And we opened in January of 2004 to the public, but spent all of 2003 putting the plan together and raising money, all that kind of stuff.
Wow. That's amazing. Do you remember who taught the class at the Kauffman Foundation?
Oh my God. Yes. Teresa, I want to say Novak or something like, no, Teresa.
Was it Teresa?
Anyway, I can't remember.
Yeah, I worked with her. We did the growth venture. I taught the growth venture class there. Not the new venture, but the growth venture with her.
Yeah, she was great. And we stayed in touch for a long time after that.
Yeah, fantastic.
So that was a great course. Yep.
Cool.
And they had me come back and speak to the new venture class, because someone had actually come out of it with a business that lasted more than a certain period of time.
Yeah. You know who was in my growth when I took the growth venture class for my last company was Laura Schmidt, that does Note to Self socks. So she's part of the hemp organization. Yeah, she was in my class when she was starting that company.
Interesting. Yeah. I love her. She's fun.
Yep, fantastic. So then you're running your dry cleaner, and I had moved to Chicago, but when I came back to Kansas City, we saw each other at one of the hemp events, and I came over for a tour. You gave me a tour of your dry cleaner, one of those locations. And so
Mhm.
what were some of your, what's a leadership challenge or leadership lesson that you had from being an
Oh,
entrepreneur and running that company?
yeah. So as my dad calls me, I'm an entrepreneur. So anyway,
That's what a
we
farmer would say.
that's right. We did so many things wrong, but we survived. I mean, one of the things I always tell people you're not going to read about in books, and I always try to give a flavor or some tidbit that maybe helps people out. When we first were coming out of the ground, I had an SBA loan and all lined up. We were set. We had everything financed according to our business plan, which of course nobody meets. But our financing got taken away through the SBA before we opened our doors. I had already made a ton of commitments, and the problem was some of the equipment I'd purchased was financed and defaulted on by the SBA by that cleaner in North Carolina, and they lost appetite. And so we're getting ready to open, and I had no money. So I started dumping all of my retirement money in, and I had to sell part of the business and sold units in our LLC. So I lost 100% control. And what it did was, I went to my parents. Brian Gunnarsson was one of them, and other people, friends and family. And my parents, I remember at the time, said, "Look, here's access to some money. We know you need to get going. When you get your financing, you pay us back whenever you can, or give us equity in the company, whatever." I call it love money, and it was basically because they loved me and they gave me access to it. And that is a burden that I don't wish on anybody, because when the company's coming out of the ground and people have given you money because they love you versus a Bank of America or some other institution that you don't really know, the reason hangers made it and didn't go under in the first few years is because of love money. I did stupid stuff that I didn't want to be the one that lost their 50 grand or whatever. You know what I mean? I just couldn't go to the Christmas party knowing that people might say, "Oh yeah, he had that business," and then it rolled under and I lost a bunch of money with him. I didn't want to be that guy. And so I did stupid things like taking a third mortgage on my home, and getting your wife to sign a third mortgage is not fun. And she's like, "What the hell are you doing?" We credit cards are maxed out. I've drained my 401k from Sprint and all that. It was just a
And it's the
situation.
dry cleaner where the products are $5 and $10 each, right? That
Right.
what you're selling is the
Yeah.
low items. Wow.
So, yeah, we had built a large processing plant thinking we're going to grow very quickly. And then obviously it takes a little longer to grow than most people think. Most entrepreneurs have visions of grandeur. It takes a while. We pivoted very quickly from a storefront type model to our routes, which we became Kansas City's largest pickup and delivery company, really one of the industry's biggest. And it was just by chance, really. We were desperate that nobody would lease me space in Brookside or Plaza area or Prairie Village where I lived, and because they weren't sure we were going to make it. And so we said, all right, then we're going to buy a van. We're going to roll through the neighborhood. And if people just leave a bag out on their front porch, we'll pick it up and we'll deliver it back on the designated day, and we'll get a credit card on file. We'll just charge you that way. It took off like wildfire. And just a quick example of one van we were doing about $300,000 to $400,000 annualized through one van, which normally takes over 10 years for a storefront to develop to that level. And so the cash flow from it, you pick it up on Monday, you deliver back on Thursday. We don't deliver back. We don't have a credit card. So we got our money 3 days later, no matter what. All of a sudden we figured out this model works, and people loved it because of the convenience. So we bought another van, and then we bought a third van, and then we quickly bought a fourth van. It was like, you know what? This is the model that's working for us, and I love it. So that's kind of how we came out of the woods and got ourselves healthy. We were still spending way too much money. And that's when Brian Gunnarsson came on board. He was going through the WorldCom merger, and
Mm.
He's a financial wizard, and I asked him to look at our books and tell me where we're bleeding cash. And he started coming in at like 4 a.m. when the process starts for us, or started for us. And he's like, I just want to see the thing from start to finish, kind of see how everything flows. I'm like, okay, you're hooked. I get it. You don't want to go back to the company, and you want
That's
to
a
figure this
good friend, but he was in it more than just the friend by then.
Yes, yeah. He didn't realize, I don't think, coming in, that he really enjoyed the impact you can have. I mean, the changes you can make in a business. And honestly, I don't know that we would have survived without him. And with his guidance, as far as doing things where we're profitable and not doing things that we're losing money, we probably would have kept growing, because I was a marketing guy. I wanted to grow this thing out of any trouble we were in. He's like, well, let's grow smart. Let's grow in areas that are making money versus just growing for the sake of growing. And so he and I have been friends forever, but we work well together. And that's so important, to get someone who you work well with, because being an entrepreneur can be very lonely. People think it's all cool and all success. Well, you're making big decisions that affect the livelihood of all the employees and everyone, even your customers. And sometimes there's no one to talk about it with. There's no one to kind of bounce ideas off of. And, I go home and Lena's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't know the business that well. I can't give you, good feedback. But having someone like Brian there, who knew the business in and out, smart guy, had different skill set than me, was absolutely critical to our success.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then away you went for another however many years, till 22, 21, 22.
Well, we sold our business in August of 23 to Pride Cleaners.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it's recent.
Yeah. And so was that a decision that came out of the pandemic, or was that a timeline you were kind of looking at anyway, or?
So we also had a fire restoration business called CRDN, and Brian and I own that together, and we sold it to Pride, the guys that own Pride, back in 2021, maybe right after the pandemic. It was almost going to happen, and then the pandemic hit, and everybody kind of shut down. So we pulled that off in 2021, and it had a really good relationship with those guys, and we really liked them. They did what they said they would do, and we were the same way. It's like we've got all these contracts drawn up, but we really didn't need them. I like those guys so much. I remember at the time them saying, hey, we'd love to buy hangers if it's for sale. And I said, well, it's not for sale. I said, I've got a son in college. At a minimum, I've got to get him through school, and then we'll figure out from there. Well, he'd graduated from K-State in May of 23. And so in January, we kept in touch, but he's like, hey, is your son still on schedule for graduation this May? Like,
they're following his college career.
So, it's one of those things where our business, our industry was not a growth industry. It wasn't sexy. I mean, it's just a hard and gross business sometimes. And to find an exit strategy, there's not a ton of them. And so we thought, this is one exit opportunity that may not come again. So let's explore it. So we kept discussions with Pride, ended up working right. Timing was right for me. I needed out of that grind. I mean, 20 years of it is a long time. The retail is so difficult with retail hours. The pandemic was a freaking gut punch for us. I mean, our revenue, within 1 week was down 75%. We started offering a lot of services just to keep our employees busy. Things like cleaning cushions and cleaning shoes and briefcases and backpacks and you name it, we did it, rugs and all that kind of stuff, just to try to get something through the door. Well, as we got through the pandemic and things started getting back to kind of normal, we were doing all these other services as well. And so we emerged pretty quickly, and we're doing well above our top line from pre-pandemic. Okay. And a lot of it, I think, was our route service, because we were going to people's homes people weren't going in the office, as you know. So we were going to their homes, and they're there. And I think out of sympathy or desire, they threw stuff out for us to clean. And I think Pride, which was a very store-centric business, they have stores everywhere, as everybody knows. They really liked the diversification of having a large route system where our vans were going to homes and things like that. So it was a perfect fit, and we got it worked out where both parties were happy, and we still stay in touch with them. I mean, Brian still works there, helps them with integration stuff and route sales, and it's been a good deal for them as well. So that makes me happy.
Wow, that's fantastic, especially when you can find the strategy that the company will continue to grow, so it works for them too, and that you both liked each other. So when you said that you didn't really even need contracts because you both trusted each other so well, that's amazing in 2023, 24. I agree. That.
Yeah, the Brancato family owns it, and they're good people. I like dealing with them.
Yeah, I think that some of them are Rockers folks too.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, Joe Brancato is the guy I dealt with the most. He's young. He's only about 30, I think, and he was a Rockers guy. And Dad, Dominic, he's probably a year or two older than me. He's a good guy too.
Yeah.
Intimidating at first, but I enjoyed dealing with him once I got to know him.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. And I love one of the stories from when I went on the tour of your dry cleaner. I remember we talked about, wouldn't it be, you knew all of your customers, not all, but you knew a lot of your customers, and you were active in the business community, and you said how, wouldn't it be funny if I showed up wearing somebody's clothes at an event? And then you did.
Yes. Yeah. There was a friend of mine who I've grown up with since grade school, and I knew he was going to be at this Christmas party. He was a customer, and so I took his sweater that was being cleaned at the time, and
so funny.
It was a Seinfeld episode. Wore it, went up, said hi to him at the party, and he's looking at me kind of funny. He's like, "Is that my sweater?" Yes, as a matter of fact, it is. Doesn't it look nice? So doing stuff like that, and it is kind of pathetic. You do get to know your customers' clothes, your good customers especially. You're like, you see stuff going through the plant, you're like, oh, I know who that belongs to, and it's pretty funny.
I remember talking like, oh, they just got back from a vacation. Like, say,
oh,
how was your trip?
Different things. And I would call customers or email them, hey, I haven't seen anything in a week or two. What's going on? Well, we've been on vacation. I will say that's one thing we did. We engaged with our customers, be emails or calls or drivers leaving something on the door, or, goofy stuff through Facebook or Twitter or whatever. It was just kind of fun to treat dry cleaning as something other than the gross, process that it actually is, which I kind of like. But
well, and I remember you talking about in the promotion, and social media became a thing during their time of ownership, and but you started out doing what everybody does, and it was formal and serious and stuff, and then you're like, that is not working, and that isn't Joe. That's not who Joe is. And so then when you started just being yourself, that worked out better.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So this was in 2008. Procter Gamble comes to Kansas City. We've just turned the corner, and we've struggled for years, and we're finally getting to where we're cash flow positive. And the Procter Gamble pops a store at 135th and Row as their test store for the whole country, $100-something billion company. I'm like, really?
Oh my God.
So I remember going to Planet Sub with Brian and a couple other key employees, and we're like, what can we do? We can't outspend them. Their store is going to look nicer. Their advertising is going to be bigger than ours because we don't have any. But we came back with, they're going to have the corporate police on them on how they communicate. And you're right. I am a little bit flippant. Sometimes I'll offend people. I get that. But it's something that's endearing to most people, I think. And Emily Voth, who was a good friend of mine and one of my advisors, she used to run Indigo Wild, and they kind of were the same thing, kind of had funny. Anyway, she's like, Joe, just be yourself. Talk to your customers like you're talking to your family over beers, and just let them know what's going on. If you offend some people, great. That means they're listening and they're reading. And so at that point, and the point was, Procter Gamble could never talk to their customers that way because the corporate police would stop it. And so we started doing it, and people loved it. I mean, we had people signing up for our emails because they just wanted to see what was coming. Well, they weren't even customers. They just wanted to see what we were talking about. And the biggest thing, I didn't see it live. I wish I would have, but was Jay Leno at night. He did these things where he would talk about different advertisers, and he's like, what in the world? This dry cleaner in Kansas City, they've got this ad for $50 off a wedding dress, so it's ready to be worn for the next time. Thinking you're probably going to get divorced and wear it again. Anyway, I was like, I was on Jay Leno, really? And anyway, that was pretty cool. And then it was just one of those things. And then I got in trouble on some of them, got to push the envelope a little too much, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's taking the chance you're going to do that. But definitely P&G can't be doing that. And then what happened to them?
Well, they're still at it. I mean, they're still.
Oh, they are?
Oh, yeah. Tide is still operating. And the Tide at 83rd and Mission, at least it was when I was in the industry a year ago, was the number one store in the country for P&G. So, but honestly, from that point, when P&G shows up with Tide in Kansas City area, it was like an inflection point for us. Our profitability went up, our sales went up, our loyalty went up. I think there was some resistance to the out-of-towners, although they got a lot of business. But I think our core people, our customers were like, no, we're sticking with our local guy. We've been with him. Any profits that they make are going to their kids and their school, and they're buying groceries and everything else in Kansas City. So I think Kansas City's got a little bit of local civic pride, and I hope that had something to do with it. I think it did. Nice.
One last thing I want to ask you about the hemp experience. So that was part of your growth as well.
Yes.
So tell a little bit about that.
Yeah. Hemp was very instrumental in our survival and ultimate success. My mentor, Melody Warren, was she was exactly what I needed at that time in my corporate or career life. And as far as, getting to know the business inside and out, and what I was good at, what I was weak at, identifying that, just being brutally honest with me, saying, hey, this is what you need to do. I know you don't like it and you're not comfortable with it. And if you're not going to do it, you need to find somebody who will do it. And that'll help drive your business. And so she was great. And that's a 3-year deal where you're married to them. I mean, we were meeting every week, and it's really good. And then to have the access to all those smart people within hemp. And then when Procter Gamble came to town, I was thrilled. Barnett Hellsberg, he knows everybody anyway, but he really took an interest in what was going on with Procter Gamble and hangers. And he felt like we were getting bullied by them a little bit, which we were. It was a little bit embarrassing, honestly, what Procter Gamble did to us. And I'm not going to talk about it on here. But he said, look, I don't know anything about your business, Joe. We would go to lunch. I mean, we'd go to lunch like every 2 weeks just to keep him updated. I thought it was cool because people would see me out to lunch with Barnett Hellsberg.
Yeah.
And he took the time. He said, look, I don't know about your business, but I know my name has a little meaning and carries a little butt weight. So if you have meetings with them again, I want to be sitting in with them, with you on those meetings, just to show them that you're not going to get pushed and shoved around. You've got Barnett Hellsberg on your side. And, nice. I sold my business to Warren Buffett, and these guys are not going to mess with you without a little fight back. And so he went in, sat a couple of meetings with me, and it was just like, it was really cool. We didn't have to do that, and I loved it. And anyway, that organization will always mean a lot to me. They helped us along the way, and forever has a soft spot in my heart for the hemp organization.
Nice. Yeah, I've participated in a few things there, as you know, and really appreciate it as well. So great organization, and I love his entrepreneurial journey as well. And he's been one of the founders that has given back a lot to the Kansas City community.
Yes, very generous.
Yes, he's done a lot for the community. Yeah. Okay, before I let you go, what's next for you? What are you doing now? What's next?
Well, now I am feeding cattle. I'm working on the family ranch up in Stewartsville, Missouri, and I'm the only male in my family that doesn't do cattle, livestock of some sort. And so it was always weird that I worked at Sprint and then opened a dry cleaner of all things. And so it was a natural fit for me to come back and help with this. And honestly, I kind of like it. Some of the solitude and being able to reflect, and I love being outdoors, and I just like the lifestyle. You know, you get up early, and I fed cattle this morning, and I give feedback to my brother on what I'm seeing and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I need to find a gig. I mean, Brian and I are looking at some businesses. We tried to buy a business. It didn't pan out. We're looking at some stuff right now. But for me, it's got to have the flexibility for me to stay, hopefully at least be at our place for 4 or 5 days a week. And my wife loves it because I'm not at home in Kansas City for those days. And she's like, yeah, it's okay. I don't need to hear all the time. I don't know what's next. You know, I've got a license to grow hemp. And so we started a business called Mocan CBD, and we've sold a few items through hangars as well as on our web, online. And we're developing some CBD infused soap right now. We're just selling tinctures, and I think of it as my nonprofit, and it's my way of giving back to the community. But we're hoping it's not a nonprofit. So soon we'll be launching our CBD infused soap, which I've developed, and it's just a goat. It's goat's milk, and it's got all natural ingredients, and it's infused with CBD oil. CBD oil is really, really good for your skin, as well as other things. The tinctures are great for, inflammation and a lot of things that people can Google and check it out. But we figured out that we're pretty good at growing hemp. Huh?
Are you working with Indigo Wild founders on that? Oh,
nope.
Okay.
No, I'm not. Huh. So this is our own deal. We pitched it to Indigo Wild that they should make some CBD infused soap. There wasn't interest, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it myself. I mean, it's not hard to learn how to make soap. You buy the good, the right type of ingredients, and so we'll see if they sell or not. If they don't, then I'll be giving a lot of soap to friends and family.
Well, and where are they on here? What is it?
Yeah, we've sold some tinctures, and I don't know if there's a business for that or not. Now that marijuana is legal in Missouri or Missouri, and so the CBD maybe has lost a little bit of its luster, but I think there's a lot of health benefits with CBD oil, and so we've shown we can grow it. We have an extractor that works great. It's all locally grown, locally produced products that we have. So we're hoping that there's a business there of some sort. We'll see.
I think there's still some market education that could happen too. So there's still room to grow in that. That's not like the dry cleaner where everybody knows what that is. So
that is for sure. You're right. It's kind of an unknown. I think it's kind of the industry was kind of seedy. I mean, I think at first the CBD, you go to some of these strip malls or in bad parts of town, you can buy a burner phone and a CD or a CBD tincture. It's not like that. It actually does have some benefits. So we'll get that above board, Yep and up.
Look forward to hearing more and maybe talk about that another time.
Yeah. So anyway.
Thank you so much for sharing. Always love talking with you and hearing your journey. And I love that you share the ups and the downs. And I think that's really useful to our listeners. And thank you. I forgot to check on I didn't even have my phone open so that I could see if anybody commented. So sorry about that if you were on live and commented. But I got so wrapped up in the conversation, I wasn't even watching. But I'll check the comments, and if there's any questions for Joe, I'll make sure he sees those and can answer those on LinkedIn or on YouTube. So thank you so much, Joe, and thank you, everybody. I do want to give a little shout out. Do you have one of these still? The little R. Donnelly Bear?
No,
I still have it after all these years. Shout out to all of our Sprint and our Donnelly friends from back in the day. Here's the next stage of your career.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me. It was fun. Good to catch up.
Yep. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, everyone. Right. See you again soon.